Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to the showdown between Tzeentch and the Wood Elves. It's going to be myself with the forces of the Changer, facing off against Hadri's, who's going to be rocking the Children of Athel Lauren. Let's get this party started and see how it goes on the Altar of the Champions. Certainly a map that probably is, got a little bit of Tzeentch ambience going on in the horizon here, so maybe the Changer's blessings are upon me. Now, as far as my build goes, it's going to be a combination of new and old. In the front line, it's going to be Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch. They've obviously always been very good against Wood Elves, right? Because the fact that all the Tzeentch units basically do magic damage makes them excellent against some of the core units that the Wood Elves do employ. Dryads, for example, War Dancers, Blade Singers, all the frontliners of the Wood Elves do have physical resist. So having that magic damage really just gives you a ton of extra DPS against them, and honestly makes the matchup a little bit tricky for the Wood Elves in many regards. So we got a couple Chaos Warriors, Tzaangors as well. So Tzaangor's going to be getting ready to party with their fast shock stats. I think it's nice to have a combination of them and Warriors. Obviously, Warriors, when they get to where they're going, will be, slightly more impactful in fighting. They have better stats, 36 and 44, although I guess Tzaangors do have higher melee attack. It's pretty crazy. Tzaangors could definitely cost like 50 more gold, but yeah, very good unit. In the second row, I just got a bunch of blues, and you could go with more expensive shooting demons, but these guys, they get the job done. They have a little bit of ammo, they have decent capture weight, decent fighting on points, they do fire damage, so if your opponent rolls in with Dryads, they have a little bit of punch. And honestly, yeah, the dagger from them is good in tandem with the capture weight. Up in the sky, it's going to be the Sorcerer Lord of Tzeentch. He's pretty underrated for sure. A little bit squishy, but on his disc, well, not squishy, he's got 80 armor, but his HP pool isn't great. So if you get caught in like a Prey of an Othrema and get sniped, it can be kind of rough. But basically, you just surf around with this guy, you cast Blue Fire, you cast all the lore of Tzeentch goodness, and then he has a cool item called the Sword of Change. This allows you to summon a unit of Chaos Spawn, which can shut down a melee fight. You can drop it on top of archers. It's great utility for sure. So that's most of my starting army. Now for Hadri's, a lot of DACA. Backfield's going to be Gladeguard, Hagbane Tips, and Starfire Shafts, both of which do magic damage, right? So that's good against my demons. And I like these guys as well. Now, the only issue with them is they're super vulnerable against like Blue Fire and Pink Fire, which can just eradicate them. But yeah, if they can get into a straight fight with like Tzaangors or Chaos Warriors, they will trade extremely well. They have almost 50 melee attack and solid armor piercing values. You can see 27 of that 36. Double Branch Wraith, I like this deck as well. Branch Wraiths are pretty rad. They have good fighting stats, and also Melkoths and Pendulum are going to be the spells here for Hadri's. Pendulum very good against the Chaos Warriors and Tzaangors, and Melkoths is just good to spam in general. There's a bit of a tech of Wood Elf players actually going for double Melkoths and just on double Branch Wraith and just spamming it all day and just getting pretty good value over the course of a long game. Couple Treemen as well, and that's going to be it for the core army with some Eternal Guard rounding things up. I also forgot to mention I do have AEKOLD. He's really good. Now, of course, armor piercing isn't what you bring him for here. It's the sustainability and fighting power on points. He has just solid stats. He's got 120 armor against some of the light armored stuff like War Dancers and Dryads. He also has a shield himself. He uses his Jedi mind powers to kind of block arrows, and it's really nasty. It does a lot of work. So moving up on the points, Hadri's going to be sending in Treekin, which is smart. Screamers are your answer to Treekin. I mean, you could use Flamers of Tzeentch, which of course can melt them if they're kind of sitting still or not really rushing you, but overall, I think Screamers are the way. One of my units here is also the Chromatic Abominations. It's the Arawar of the Blue Horrors. These guys are great because they're shielded. So against Wood Elf Focus Fire, it gives you a little bit of a damage mitigation. So up on the point here, and our Chaos Sorcerer Lord's going to be looking for blood, so going to be starting to drop some big pink fires on the back on the Gladeguard with Starfire Shafts. Granted, it was probably a bit of a mistake out of the gates. I should have dropped it on the Wildwood Rangers. They're just such an impactful unit. But, you see the archers, you see the DPS they're doing, and I also saw they were kind of lined up like this. And instantly, this Chaos Sorcerer Lord's going to be able to shut down a couple units. So I drop a Chaos Spawn back there, and yeah, he's going to be able to kite them, but it will keep those archers from shooting for a long time. Now, frontline fighting is underway. We do get the Chaos Warriors battling the Treekin and the Wildwood Rangers moving in. Tzaangors retreating, not wanting any of this business, right? If I get caught by these Wildwood Rangers and double Branch Wraiths, they're just going to get bashed. So yeah, certainly not a good trade for me. On the far side here, we got Tzaangors, or not actually just Marauders and Blues, and also my Screamers trying to get in and take down the Firebark Elders, putting a little bit of DACA down, but they themselves have just like great resistances and armor. So we don't get a ton of damage in, but trying to work it. Far side objective taken pretty easily. We do manage to get AEKOLD and some Chaos Warriors over there with some Marauders, so that objective is ours, and we're looking to do a very aggressive triple cap here. Obviously, the Wood Elf DPS and defensive play can be nasty, but I figure if I can get enough of a points lead early with a triple cap, we're going to be in good shape. Screamers called in from Zerb, Pendulum going down from Hadri's. Going to be a nice tap right here on the Chaos Warriors. That was a decent one. They weren't like perfectly lined up, but the Screamers here are going to be turning the tide of the fight. They're a hard counter against those Treekin. Treekin love their physical resist, and the Screamers, of course, doing magic damage is super solid there. Chaos Spawn's still moving around. We got another 20 seconds. Chaos Warriors pushing the archers into the backfield, so just trying to disrupt the battle line to make sure those archers can't do their thing. Obviously, he's going to be able to call out answers, and the Chaos Spawn will disappear in 10 seconds, but all the time the archers aren't shooting is a big victory for us. Unfortunately, we do lose the top point. The Firebark Elders, some Hagbane tips, and these were the Wardens of Sithril, which was a big underestimation on my part. I actually thought that these bad boys were basic Eternal Guard, but no, they were grinding through my Armored Warriors and Zangors and different units, and yeah, really, really problematic, but getting a little bit low now. We toss the blues into combat, get another blue on the objective, and now we call in some big hitters. Doom Knights of Tzeentch. I think they're really good. You know, Wood Elves hate Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights are fast, high armored, really good at pressing your back line, but when you bring in the Knights of Immolation, it's kind of similar, but they're just flying, right? So yeah, a great pick. Their bombardments do a lot of work as well. The middle objective is owned by us, and we're starting to get some good trades now that your boy AEKOLD has gotten in here. He's going to be providing some much-needed armor piercing to help get through these Treekin. So we're going to see if he's going to be able to use some of his Jedi mind powers to chop through those bad boys. We will certainly see. Back here, Doom Knight's going for a snipe. We see the Branch Wraith a little bit vulnerable and certainly an easy target for us to hunt down. In the backfield, my diving units, the blues, got compromised up on objective number 2, and these other blues are most likely going to be dragged down. So Hadri's going to have a pretty decisive victory over on objective 2. Meanwhile, all the archers are just kind of fanning out in several directions. He calls in Treekin to battle the Chaos Warriors, which I think the Treekin will eventually win that fight. It's just going to take like 10 years, but the Chaos Warriors are just going to struggle with the resistances. Well, I guess they won't because of the physical, so I don't know. Yeah, I guess the HP pulls the difference. That's actually a really interesting thing. I wonder who would win that in the long run. Chromatic Abomination still trolling to the backfield. Nice shots going down as they just put Daka into those archers. In the middle objective, though, it's going quite well. The Branch Wraith did get gooned pretty heavily. The Doom Knights plus the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, he's not a bad fighter himself. That's kind of the cool thing. Like, if you're playing tabletop Chaos, like, their casters are usually pretty formidable fighters as well. Like if you're playing like Death Guard or Chaos Space Marines in 40k. And, you know, it kind of is reflected here as well, that Chaos Casters are heavily armored and good fighters. So he's able to get in there, bash that Branch Wraith. Far side point, completely lost Firebark Elders and Wardens of Sithril, the 2 RORs of the Wood Elves doing good work. Now Hadri's has a nice little firing position on me. He's got a concave of Starfire Shafts, Hagbane tips, just kind of poking away at my middle objective. Meanwhile, AEKOLD trying to move to objective 3. However, I should have just gone after this Branch Wraith. I had a hard-on for reinforcing this far side objective, and that's what's going to go down now. So Marauders about to engage against Archers, and the Doom Knight's going to be piling in. Bombardment in just a second will be dropped to the Knights of Immolation. Of course, we have a sweep bombardment ability, which is really, really good for breaking up a position. Like, even if there was like a full health unit of spears, you can bombard them and then dive them. You see now they're weak to fire damage, right? So these guys do fire, so it's a 10% damage buff to them if you bombard something with the Warp Flame. Really, really nice synergy heavy unit. Zangor's grabbing objective number 3, Knights of Immolation at back up in the sky. That objective should be ours pretty comfortably. And as far as the value goes, 6.5 against 5.9. Wood Elves did not bring a healing build, so I'm probably pretty well ahead on value at this point, simply because I've been having regenerating shields, and that's pretty significant when it goes over the course of a long game. But objective 3 belongs to the Wood Elves. Objective 1 in the middle is going to be taken by them as well. Zangor's trying to make their way back over, and AEKOLD Hellbrass in the Duel of Fates with the Banshee. Or the Branch Wraith, excuse me. Yeah, kind of like a Wood Elf Banshee, right? But he's going to kick this thing's butt. He's a great duelist. Really, really scary. There's not too many characters in the game that can go fisticuffs in terms of like hero slots. I mean, there's obviously some legendary lords and big monsters that can beat him down, but that Branch Wraith is going to get done pretty dirty here. Knights of Immolation heading in. Going to be trying to bust up objective number 1 here and get back on the board. We are up on points. We had a pretty good lead, but he has managed to wrestle the points. Wood Elves can play from behind. You know, slower factions usually can't play from behind because they're going to be losing on value and they're too slow to, you know, have these mobile plays on objectives. But Wood Elves are a faction that certainly can play from behind here, as the Treekin do make their way towards the middle, and the Doom Knights of Immolation do move in, once again, screaming through the skies. The Tzeentch aesthetic is pretty rad. These guys just like surfing all over these archers, and yeah, they should be able to take him out pretty quickly, basically flying chosen here. Zangor's also lurking on the objective. Marauders holding on to objective 3 here, being poked by the Glade Guard, who are doing a little bit of skirmishing, kind of riding around, harassing objectives, and also diving units. I did do a little bit of a preemptive scream with Marauders versus Eternal Guard. I actually don't know who wins that in like a straight up fight. I think like a full health Marauder of Tzeentch might actually be able to edge it out. It's hard to say though. That shield is nice. Yeah, some things that I would have to try. Tzeentch, I think they're going to be pretty fun this patch. Overall, I do think that Tzeentch is going to be like a solid, like upper mid tier faction. Like I think they'll be like an A tier faction. Not S tier like in Kislev territory, but they'll be pretty good. The new tools they got, Zangors are great. The one thing that is kind of like I would rate a little bit poor about their update is that the Changeling isn't really usable in multiplayer. I mean, you can kind of just turn them into Kugath, but that's a very fringe situation, right? I guess if you're playing Khorne, but Khorne already just loses to you anyways because Khorne is pretty weak right now. On the far side, Marauders heading here, and we got Blues splitting the difference, looking to get a little bit of DACA downtown. On the backside, Chromatic Abominations being called back in for round 2, baby. We keep rumbling on this objective here. AEKOLD, Hellbrass, and the Zangors proving to just be so good. I mean, Zangors are just so good. Man, it's like, I mean, Warriors of Chaos can bring them, but they have to use the Marks of Tzeentch to bring them. So it is like a marked thing, and dude, the Jedi Master over here, dude. Obi-Wan AEKOLD, just karate chopping. Far side, objective 3, Marauders and Zangors holding it down. A little bit of pressure coming in from Hadri's. Treekin will beat a Zangor unit. Again, it's going to take like 10 years, but if they have a little bit of DACA support from the Glade Guard, Hagbane Tips, as well as the Eternal Guard, they should be able to win that fight decisively. So I kind of felt as if I was going to be losing objective 3, and so in that case, we'll be pressuring 1 and 2 as well. Since we have good capture weight moving up, Marauders of Tzeentch heading in. But some Wildwood Rangers are going to be out to respond. Wildwood Rangers, of course, will butcher a lot of my infantry units, but with a little bit of magic and focus fire from my ranged, we can drag them down no problem. Zangors have finished off the Eternal Guard here. AEKOLD providing a little bit of cap weight as well. And these Glade Riders with Hagbane Tips is trying desperately to hold on to the point. Hadri's obviously throwing them into a bit of a precarious situation just to maintain capture weight and slow me down from playing the objective. Something you see at the higher levels of the domination mode are these really like cheeky plays to like plant things on the edge of objectives to make sure your opponent isn't getting it. Honestly, if you're a fan of like, you know, tabletop 40k, tabletop Warhammer in general, it's very familiar. Like for example, if you're playing like tabletop Warhammer, you're often going to park like units at the maximum range they need to hold an objective just to make it a little bit harder for your opponent to charge you off the objective. Like there's lots of like cheeky objective play, which really feels like tabletop to me. Zangor is heading across, but they are afflicted by the Melkoths. The Branch Wraith has been resummoned, up to 800 value, not bad. Just spamming Melkoths on my infantry is, I think, very cost effective for sure. Wood Elves are certainly a tricky faction to play. So bombardment coming down here. It's going to be the Tzeentch ultimate, and I figured we could just nail those Wardens. So we do retreat the Marauders of Tzeentch at the last second, but they're going to be getting caught up as collateral damage. And honestly, it's pretty worth it against these very elite units. Zangor's coming in with the sandwiching charge against the Chosen of Athel Loren. And those Wildwood Rangers getting nuked by the Hellfire of Tzeentch. Probably not going to be winning this fight as they do drag down to 50 models, but even still, yeah, they're putting some hurt on those Zangors for sure. Screamers moving up against the Firebark Elders. Objective 1 firmly under our control. Zangors and Chromatic Abominations holding that one down. Certainly a big misplay with AEKOLD. He had a bit of a hard-on for chasing down these archers, so now he's going to be heading towards Objective 2 as Doom Knights are left on the edge of the map. Classic big plays right there. This objective is just barely under our control. Zangors fighting pretty valiantly with their 80 armor, and their shields I don't think are helping them because they're being shot in the side. But this objective is going to be a bit of a loss. I thought I could reinforce it with Screamers, but I didn't see the Eternal Guard creeping in, which is going to be turning the tides of that. But the thing is, the game's close enough that if I can secure 2 objectives while also having, you know, almost a 3,000 value lead, my opponent probably isn't going to be able to wrestle them back despite really good play and micro and scrappiness and all that stuff, right? So Chaos Sorcerer Lord surfing around on his old disc. The Screamers of Tzeentch going to be diving on top of the Glade Guard Hagbane Tips, trying to force him off the objective here. Meanwhile, we do have our Marauders and a couple of rallying units who will be moving in for capture weight. And look at these Wildwood Rangers, man. They're still going. They were like fighting those Zangors. Not a lot of value, but yeah, their staying power is not terrible. In the middle, Treekin moving in, but they are taking fire damage. So, you know, the fire damage will give me extra DPS against them. But the issue being is that, of course, they have 90 armor. So it's a bit of a trade-off, just kind of counterbalances one another. Looks like a little bit of a back dive going in. So Hadri's trying to get the Glade Guard Hagbane Tips on top of the Chromatic Abominations. But they're pretty good fighters. 27, 29, and 24. They could fight off a skirmish cav unit with 160 models, like no problem. But we're able to just kind of use these Zangors to screen them and then get that juicy Warp Flame on them. And certainly paying huge dues as more Blues are being called in for the backfield. On this side, Zangor is going to be heading towards this objective to try and get up and around on top of those Eternal Guard. And AEKOLD, I think, is off in the Shadow Realm somewhere. No, the Doom Knights are still AFK in the corner. Taking me back to the classic land battle days. The dreaded tactical reserves of old, yes. Our middle objective is looking like it's being pressed a little bit by the Wood Elves, but honestly, their pressing power, they don't have like the killing power. Even though they might have more cap weight, they're going to be losing it quickly here. As the Screamers will dive in on the Treekin, we have the Chromatic Abominations. My Lord is there. AEKOLD will be approaching, and the Blue Horrors as well. So at this point, it's going to be very tough for the Wood Elves. Behind on value, Tzeentch army ability going down here as AEKOLD Hellbrass continues to karate chop characters. And man, he's so good at doing that. Like, he is just, it's basically like having an armor-piercing Sigvald that, like, honestly, he's probably just better than Sigvald, right? Like, Sigvald, I suppose, Sigvald would be better against like light armored factions because his healing is better, his combat stats are better, he just lacks armor piercing. Yeah, so it's a bit of a trade-off, I suppose, but yeah, AEKOLD is just an absolute raid boss there. Back to objective number 1. Looks like we got it on lock. Far side objective 3. Zangor is going to be butchering those units. And at this point, Hadri's knows it's over. All 3 of the objectives do start to flip, and he's going to be tapping out. So it was a fun game for sure. We got to see the strength of these Angors, just pressing on objectives. AEKOLD, you know, even though I microed him very poorly, he could have been more effective and gotten more kills if I wasn't so spaced out with his micro. But yeah, the Tzeentch Lord was awesome, 2,000 value. He doesn't cost that much, so, you know, he did well. I think the Doom Knights came in, got about 1,500 Screamers, of course. You should bring them to counter Treekin, and just in case, like, Wood Elf players get a little bit spicy and bring, like, some big monsters, you know, maybe like some wild Zoats, or they end up bringing in an ancient tree man of some sort, you do want to have a couple Screamers in reserve, because you'll notice my build sucks against like big tree monsters, right? Like nothing here is good against big tree monsters. Maybe your boy AEKOLD could put some hurt on them, but it would be tough. And yeah, the hero fighting went good for us. I think the initial press on the archers is what gave us a big edge early on, when those like 3 or 4 archer units were running from like 2 units, including one of which was a summon. I think that really changed the momentum of the game. Anyways, GG, well played. We'll see you guys on the other side. Take care of yourselves, and that is going to be it for today.